Chicago branch for hosting these series for the Holy Nights, as well as other Zoom sessions that allow us to reach out to people in other geographic areas. We all know that the Holy Nights are a special time, and I think 2025 is can be a very challenging year, and I think we'll need all the blessings we can bring with us out of these Holy Nights to meet those challenges. So greetings and aloha from Hawaii. I know some of you probably got cold winter out there, where we have a nice warm breeze outside, sun shining, blue skies, birds singing in the trees. I got a little garden in the backyard that I've been working with. It's a way of getting in touch with the etheric world. I've got to put a little fence around it because the chicken otherwise wants to get in. So it helps to be in touch with nature and expand our consciousness to include the world of plants and animals. And the shepherds were especially attuned to that. And I think we have to find our way back, because we have so much coming towards us in terms of social media, in terms of this digitalized world that we're exposed to, which we've got to work with, but without sort of suffering from the consequences that can arise if we don't balance it out. So let me share my screen here. So the theme has to do with the Sophia and the birth of the new mysteries. This has a special significance for the Holy Nights, that the Sophian mysteries, as I want to present them, are really only in their beginnings, that in the future they will become ever more important. So this is just to remind us of the significance of the Holy Nights, where Steiner indicated, experience the Christ festival in all its profundity, but then plunge during the 12 Holy Nights into the holiest mysteries of the cosmos. And this means into the universal realm whence Christ descended from the earth, to the earth, I should say. Rudolf Steiner spoke the following words while leading up to the concluding verse. This is the verses of the Foundation Stone meditation during the Christmas conference. We do this at a moment when the remembering of the man who truly understands the world looks back to the turning point in mankind's evolution, the turning point of time when, amid darkness of night, darkness in moral feeling of mankind, striking in as light from the heaven, there was born the divine being who became the Christ, the spirit being who came to dwell in mankind. And we can best make strong the warmth of soul and light of soul we need if quickened and inspired by that warmth and light which rayed forth at the turning point of time, even the light of the Christ amidst the darkness of the world, the original Christmas 2,000 years ago. Let us now call it to life in our own heart and mind and will. So let the feeling of our hearts be turned backwards in time to the first Christmas night in ancient Palestine. This is again to just remind us of the fact that this birth involves really a union of two streams, the shepherds and the kings. And that since we're in the latter days of the Holy Nights, we're approaching the 6th of January, which is both Three Kings Day and Epiphany. And that is really when the Christ enters, the Jesus being at the baptism in the Jordan, and then lives on the earth for 3 years. But the preparation for that, which had a great deal to do with Yahweh, who was the one who prepared the Grail vessel for the solar Logos, the Christ, to descend through 42 generations, 3 times 14 generations, through the Hebrew people whose mission it was to prepare this physical body, that we hear then of these two aspects of the Jesus being, the one mentioned in the Luke Gospel, where it was the shepherds who welcomed him, the shepherds who could still hearken to the angelic world, peace on earth and goodwill to men of goodwill. And on the other side, we had the kings who could still read the cosmic script, who could still lift the veil of the icy Sophia and have an awakening to the fact that this presence of the Christ was descending to the earth, so that they made their way to Palestine to welcome this Solomon child that's highlighted in the Matthew Gospel. So we have then in the Gospels, Matthew and Luke, 2 different genealogies that point to this. Both of them go back to David. On the Matthew side, you have the kingly roots. The kings are mentioned, and that begins with Solomon in that lineage, whereas the Luke, it's the Nathan, the more priestly side. And we have 77 generations there as opposed to 42 generations on the other side. And we know that the Hebrew people who were expecting the Messiah, who were aware this is their primary mission, that they kept close track of these lineages. So it's interesting that this isn't really understood by wider circles in the Christian world, but here we're plunging more into what one can refer to as esoteric Christianity as opposed to exoteric.
Dear Florian, just one second. People are complaining, so you are speaking too soft. Maybe you can raise your volume or keep your mic a little closer.
Okay.
So, because I feel we are missing very important piece of knowledge. Maybe you can overlap it, just repeat like previous slide, please, if it's possible. Would you try to would you try to speak? Just let's spend 1 minute for it. We can fix it. Waldemar, can you hear me? Florian, can you speak just, for test?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly, Andre.
Yeah, what about Florian?
How about, can you hear me, Vladimir?
Well,
Yes,
well,
much better now. Much
Okay.
better.
Okay, I'll see what I can do to make it a little stronger. Here, I was looking at these genealogies of the Matthew and Luke Gospel, where we have the descent from King David on both sides. And on the left, we have the kingly lineage that descends from David to Solomon and on through other royal aspects of the lineage. And on the other side, we have David's offspring, the Nathan side, which is the priestly side. And these then converge later when the child reaches the age of 12. And some of these pictures down below depict this aspect of the two children, so that some of them had this imagination to work with that they brought to expression in art. And there's many more than the ones I'm showing here. In the book by Emil Bach, The Childhood and Youth of Jesus, he gives an indication of the profound mystery concerning the Luke Mary in the following words. In her being and her countenance, there is reflected in the most radiant purity and perfection a divine archetypal picture which hovers over mankind in the spiritual world. Just as in the child that she is to bear, there is mirrored and embodied the archetypal image of the child and of childhood, a focus of all that is childlike upon earth. So in the Luke Mary, an earth translated archetypal picture of all virginal womanhood, the manifestation of the eternal feminine, the woman of all women. Although outwardly insignificant, here was a human soul wholly overshadowed and imbued by the world soul, and hence by that pure being of cosmic light, who in antiquity was called Isis Sophia, and in Christendom, the Holy Spirit. Thus, this is from Rudolf Steiner. Thus, we have acquired two concepts in their spiritual significance. We have learned to know the nature of the Virgin Sophia, which is the purified astral body, and the nature of the Holy Spirit, the universal cosmic ego, which is received by the Virgin Sophia and which can then speak out of this purified astral body. The author of the St. John's Gospel regarded the physical historic mother of Jesus in her most prominent characteristics and asked himself, where shall I find a name for her which will express most perfectly her real being? Then, because she had, by means of her earlier incarnations, reached those spiritual heights upon which she stood, and because she appeared in her external personality to be a counterpart, a revelation of what was called in esoteric Christianity the Virgin Sophia, he called the mother of Jesus the Virgin Sophia. And this is what she was always called in the esoteric places where esoteric Christianity was taught. Now we have to then differentiate between the Nathan mother that I was bringing to expression through email box quote above. This is really like the child, which one could say is the first physical incarnation of this Nathan Jesus child on the earth. And the same could be said of the Nathan Mary, whom the shepherds came to witness, that she, like the Nathan Jesus, were held back, you could say, just as a part of the soul of Adam, according to Rudolf Steiner, was held back after the Luciferic invasion of the human astral body to prevent the etheric body from also being tainted. These higher spirits who guard the sun mysteries drew out of the soul of Adam the higher etheric forces, the life ether and the sound and tone ether. And that is what's later called the Nathan Jesus being, who was kept in the mother lodge of humanity. And according to Steiner, actually served 3 times for the Christ to intervene in human evolution in pre-Christian times, once in the Lemurian time and twice in the Atlantean period. So this being has been imbued with the Christ forces, which have raised this being to a higher level. And in the case of the other Solomon child, we have to do with a being who harkens back to Zarathustra, who has many incarnations behind him, who had an incarnation in the 6th century as Zaratas, and that he had pupils who came to him at that time, who reincarnated as the Magi. They saw his descent. His name is the Golden Star. He has an astral body that has been raised to Manas, and an etheric body that has raised to Buddhi, which manifests as a golden star. An ether body that has reached the stage of Buddhi doesn't disintegrate at death. It doesn't disperse into the astral world. And such a soul can more readily choose to incarnate without a long period in the soul spiritual world. And so we have then this Solomon Mary, who was the bearer of this Solomon child, who lived in Bethlehem, who was married then to the royal offspring of Joseph, of David, the Joseph of the Solomon child. And in the 5th gospel, Steiner speaks of this Solomon Mary, because the Nathan Mary dies. And we need to familiarize ourselves with this mystery of the Solomon Mary, who's depicted in this slide on the left, where the 3 kings come. And I'll say more about that in a little bit here. So this looks towards the January 6th celebration of the 3 kings and Epiphany, Epiphany being then the birth of the Christ. Up until 354 AD, the birth wasn't celebrated on the 24th or 25th, but rather on the January 6th. All four Gospels speak of this birth through the baptism. And Rudolf Steiner, in this fifth Gospel, which is the Gospel of knowledge, it's the Gospel of the future that leads over to Jupiter. This was something that Steiner first spoke of when he laid the foundation stone for the first Goetheanum. And that was in 1913 in September 20th, I believe. And he then went on when he spoke of this mystery of the baptism, that before that baptism, there was a meeting, and it wasn't the first meeting, but it was the most significant meeting of the Jesus being, who you could say now, since the age of 12, involves the union of the two, the physical Nathan Jesus and the Solomon Jesus, who incorporated in him and underwent a communion at the age of 12. So in the meantime, 18 years have gone by, and the Jesus being has traveled. He was a carpenter, which he learned as a trade, and traveled and had many deep and profound experiences. And he would then come back and share his experiences. And just before the baptism, there was one such encounter that Steiner describes. And during that conversation, during the Jesus sharing what he had witnessed, this speaking of the Logos brought about a transformation in the Solomon Mary, who had earlier had a physical, earthly relationship with the Nathan Mary. And this Nathan Mary now, in the midst of that conversation, descended into the Solomon Mary. And this, according to Steiner, reestablished the virginity of the Solomon Mary and set the stage for the descent of the Sophia, the incorporation of the Sophia into the Solomon Mary. So that at the same time that the Jesus being goes to the Jordan to be baptized, where the Christ descends into that physically prepared vessel, the Holy Grail vessel, one could say, the archetypal Grail. At the same time, the Sophia being incorporates into the Solomon Mary, and the Nathan Mary is the bridge, this pure virginal soul who never partook of the fall. You could say that a part of the Eve being was held back, just like I mentioned earlier, a part of the Adam being was held back and was then guarded in the Sun Lodge, also called the Great Mother Lodge, where the masters of wisdom and harmony of feeling are gathered around the 13th. The 13th was referred to as the Manu, who was overlighted by the Holy Spirit. And of course, the 13th is the Christ being. So from that mother lodge, these eugenic mysteries were prepared. So we should also keep in mind that, as Rudolf Steiner indicated in his lectures, 1924, I believe, on the breathing of the earth and the seasons on the one hand, and the other was on the archangels and the four seasons, that these can be seen as four points of the cycle of the year that have to do with the earth revolving around the sun. That there are four gateways to these new sun mysteries that the Christ brought to the earth, and they fall in close relationship to the solstices and equinoxes. And on the 21st of December, we pass through the winter solstice. So we're still in that period where we have the longest nights, and now we have the sun conquering the darkness and the ascending sun forces. And it's the Gabriel being who's the guardian, the Archangel Gabriel as the guardian of these birth mysteries of Christmas. These eugenic mysteries are under the sign of the moon. And this is sort of, you could say, where the moon forces become a vessel for the sun forces. So you have the moon being forged into a grail vessel. Now, I wanted to bring a theme that I've been dealing with in these apocalypse lectures that I've been giving in the past to remind people about the indications that Steiner gave during the priest cycle given from the 5th to the 20th of September 1924. Soon after that, he gave his last address on the 28th, and after that, he became too sick. So in the 13th lecture, he spoke of an interpretation of the apocalypse that pertains to this consciousness soul age. He stated that, quote, "We are living in the age of the trumpets. The sixth angel began to sound his trumpet at the beginning of the 1840s and will continue to sound it until the end of the 20th century, when the trumpet of the seventh angel will begin to sound. We are definitely within the realm of the woes." So the three last trumpet are called the three woes. The sixth trumpet began to sound in the 1840s. That's when collectively humanity began to cross the threshold. And there's kind of an ascending and descending stream of humanity as a result of that crossing of the threshold, which Steiner describes in other places. The events related to the sounding of the seventh trumpet involve the central drama that's described in the 12th chapter at the very heart of the book of Revelation, where the woman standing upon the moon, clothed with the sun, crowned with the 12 stars, makes her appearance. She is pained to be delivered, and the great red dragon with 7 heads, who cast down a third of the stars with his tail, the spiritual third, seeks to devour the child. The archangel Michael, the son of Sophia, comes forward as her defender, engages the dragon, and casts it down to the earth. The child is delivered and taken up unto the throne of God. So this trumpet sounding in our time is something that we need to be awake to. I would say that it's kind of for our time an imagination of the birth of the cosmic Christ in the etheric world. And this is a metamorphosis of the first coming of the Christ being. And the Sophia being embodies manas, spirit self, which is the next stage of humanity's evolution that we have to aspire to, that we have to bring to fruition. And we can do that by recognizing that the Christ has a countenance, which is Michael. Michael is the countenance of Christ. Michael is the son of Sophia. Michael is born out of the heart of the Sophia in this imagination. And it's this Michael, the countenance of Christ, who comes forward as the son of Sophia, who battles with the dragon, also called the spirits of darkness. And that battle lasts from the 1840s to 1879. So it's very recent in human history. And now that dragon has been cast down into the human world. And we need to find our way to realizing how we can awaken this inner sun. The experience of the spiritual, and together with it, the vision of the spiritual, can re-enter the vision of the outward material world in a new way. The knowledge of nature acquired during the age of materialism can be comprehended in the soul's inner life in a spiritual way. Michael, who is spoken from above, can be heard from within, where he will begin to dwell. Speaking more imaginatively, this may be expressed as follows. The sun nature, which for long periods man received only from the cosmos, will begin to shine within the soul. He will learn to speak of an inner sun. This will not prevent him from knowing himself to be an earthly being during his life between birth and death, but he will recognize that his earthly being is led by the sun. He will learn to feel as a truth that a being places him in his inner nature into a light which shines indeed upon earthly existence, but which is not kindled within it. In the dawn of the Michael age, it may still seem as if all this were very far remote from humanity, but in the spirit it is near. It only needs to be seen. A very great depends on this fact that the ideas of man do not merely remain thinking, but in thought develop sight. It is Michael's mission to bring into human etheric bodies the forces through which the shadow thoughts may regain life. Then the souls and spirits in the supersensible worlds will incline towards the enlivened thoughts, and the liberated human being will be able to live with them, just as formerly the human being, who was only the physical image of their activity, lived within them. So this is just another picture of this World Christmas that Cindy, my wife, and I did back in 1980. And we kind of collaborated on many different imaginations of this sort. And we know from the book of Revelation that the sacrificial lamb is the one that's able to open the book and to loose the seals thereof. That means opening the future. The 7 ages of our epoch are sealed, our destiny are sealed, but the Lord of Karma, the Christ, can open those 7 seals and actually reveals our future to us in the book of Revelation if we can read it correctly. And so we can, through awakening, not just head knowledge, but heart knowledge, we could talk about a kind of lemniscate between head and heart, where the crossing point is the larynx. Rudolf Steiner spoke from that crossing point. But it's the Sophia who gives birth. The earthly birth is just a earthly manifestation of a cosmic birth and a cosmic battle, just like Herod sought to kill the child in Bethlehem and sent out his soldiers to kill every child below the age of 2. But an angel appeared to Joseph and told them to flee to Egypt, where they found their way to Heliopolis, where the sun mysteries were cultivated, where the obelisk expresses those sun mysteries in the Egyptian time. So we too need to hearken to what the angels have to tell us. So this World Christmas has also this kind of a danger. We are collectively overlighted by a World Christmas that's currently underway on the macrocosmic level. The cosmic Christ has been born on the etheric plane. However, the same battle that Michael fought on our behalf must now be fought microcosmically on the human level. For as the narrative continues, we are told that the dragon is full of wrath after he's been cast down and sends out a flood after the woman and the remnant of her seed, which are those human beings who look up to her as the archetype of their soul. She takes refuge in the wilderness of the earth. The dragon's flood can be related to the digitally generated pictures and images woven of subnature forces that currently flood the lower astral realm and thereby prevent the archetypal world of genuine imaginations from coming into clear view. It is said that the earth takes up the flood, for the collective lower astral reaches into the interior of the earth or subnature. We must also reverse the death of Sophia expressed by the dragon casting down 1/3 of the stars down to the earth. This is the spiritual third, that due to the dragon-inspired scientific materialism being projected into the heavens, we have lost touch with the secret of the stars. We must learn to lift the veil of icy Sophia woven of the myriad stars that make up her heavenly garment in order to awaken the cosmic dimension of our being. For it is on this higher level, which begins with the etheric, that the cosmic Christ is also waiting to be discovered. The woman is given wings of the eagle to ascend to a higher, purer level of the astral world in order to avoid the contamination from the flood. This gift of the wings can be related to the spiritualizing of human intelligence by living into the writings of the beloved disciple John, who authored the 4th Gospel and the book of Revelation, who is symbolized by the eagle. We can contribute to the unfolding of these Sophian wings in our own soul. He was the only one of the 12 to stand faithfully beneath the cross. And the last words spoken from the cross were the blessing that brought about a soul spiritual communion with Maria Sophia. John and Maria Sophia henceforth lived together later moving to Ephesus, where the mysteries of the Logos had been cultivated by Heraclitus, among others. The collaboration that took place between John and the Solomon Mary, in whom the Sophia was incorporated, led Steiner to refer to the John Gospel that begins with "In the beginning was the Word" as the Sophian Gospel. The book of Revelation, you could say, is also born of this communion. So here we have this reversal of the Osiris myth, since we, in this fifth age of the seven post-Atlantean ages, it sort of stands across in the sevenfold rhythm of time to the third age, which was the Egypto-Chaldean Babylonian age. And Steiner then speaks of this reversal. He says the world picture of Copernicus, Galileo, and Kepler is a Luciferic construction, precisely because it arose from and corresponds to our Ahrimanic forces of knowledge. Its content, please distinguish here between method and content, is a Luciferic one. Steiner spoke of a new Isis legend as relevant for our time as the death of Osiris by Typhon Ahriman was in the Egyptian age. Projecting this materialistic, mechanistic astronomy onto the heavens has brought about the death of Sophia. Steiner went on to say, we do not lack Christ, but the knowledge of Christ, the Sophia of Christ, the Isis of Christ is lacking. Just as the Egyptians looked from Osiris to Isis, so we must learn to look again to the new Isis, the Holy Sophia. The Christ will appear again in his spiritual form during the course of the 20th century, but not through the arrival of external events alone, but because human beings find the power represented by the Holy Sophia. So we have to raise our consciousness to the Sophia. And in a series of lectures where Steiner speaks of this, he gives the following mantric verse. Isis Sophia, wisdom of God, she has been slain by Lucifer, and on the wings of the powers of the world carried her hence into the infinite space of the universe. The willing of Christ working in man shall rest from Lucifer, and on the boats of spirit knowledge awaken in human souls Isis Sophia, wisdom of God. So this has led to what is expressed in this verse. The stars once spoke to man. It is the world destiny that they are silent now. To be aware of this silence can become pain for earthly man. But in the deepening silence, there grows and ripens what man speaks to the stars. To be aware of this speaking can become strength for spirit man. And it's this new speaking, the opening the space in our souls for the Logos to speak within us, the Holy Spirit to speak within us. So we've passed through the age of the Father, the age of the Son. We're now in the age of the Holy Spirit. And just as at the Pentecost event, you had the Mary being who was really the Sophia being incorporated in a physical vessel, that she was in the middle, in the midst of this circle of disciples and those gathered around them at this time, which is 50 days after Easter. And you could say that the redeemed Lucifer, because that's what happens when we purify our soul. We redeem Lucifer, and Lucifer then becomes the servant of Sophia. Lucifer, who rebelled, aligns himself and carries the imagination of Sophia down, and he does so with the fire of enthusiasm that burned brightly among the heads of those disciples who were gathered around the Maria. So this is really a transition from the birth that took place outside at Bethlehem, and now it's the birth within the human being. That's what is meant to happen in our age. That's what anthroposophy seeks to bring to our awareness. So this is kind of the counterpart to the in the beginning was the word. When you speak the word, what is it you're speaking? In the ordinary word, we're speaking our thoughts, often our abstract thoughts. But when we hear at the beginning of the John Gospel, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and nothing was made without him. In the old Solomonic texts, we hear of Sophia saying of herself, I was there at the beginning. I was there before the foundations of the earth were laid, etc. So before the Logos spoke forth the creation, the Sophia, the divine wisdom, the divine thought, was what was being spoken through the Logos. And Steiner expresses this in the following words. In the beginning was the thought, and the thought is something infinite, and the life of the thought is the light of the eye. May the illuminated thought fill the darkness of my eye, so that the darkness of my eye take hold of it, the living thought, and live and weave in its divine beginning. So Sophia is wisdom. However, Steiner tried to warn us in his very last written words to members of the Anthroposophical Society. Here's an excerpt from what's referred to as the leading thoughts. Also, these are called the Michael thoughts. By far the greater part of that which works in modern civilization through technical science and industry, wherein the life of man is so intensely interwoven, is not nature at all, but subnature. It is a world which emancipates itself from nature, emancipates itself in a downward direction. Entering the purely earthly element, he strikes upon the Ahrimanic element. With his own being, he must now acquire a right relationship to the Ahrimanic. But in the age of technical science, hitherto, the possibility of finding a true relationship to the Ahrimanic civilization has escaped man. He must find the strength, the inner force of knowledge, in order not to be overcome by Ahriman in this technical civilization. He must understand subnature for what it really is. This he can only do if he rises in spiritual knowledge at least as far into extra-earthly supernature as he has descended in technical sciences into subnature. The age requires a knowledge transcending nature because in its life it must come to grips with a life content which has sunk far beneath nature, a life content whose influence is perilous. Electricity, for instance, celebrated since its discovery as the very soul of nature's existence, must be recognized in its true character, in its peculiar power of leading down from nature to subnature. Only man himself must beware lest he slide downward with it. So this is the danger we're facing in our time. Our thinking has been transferred into this subnature world through the digital binary code that informs our computers through its algorithms and mimics human intelligence. But this thinking doesn't lead from nature to supernature, but rather from nature into subnature. Electricity, magnetism, nuclear energy are three levels of subnature. Electricity is related to the fallen etheric and astral forces that Lucifer drew down into that lower world. Magnetism is the chemical ether that has fallen. Also lower Devachan draw down into subnature. And then the nuclear force, the third force, is the fallen higher Devachan, fallen life ether, where the Azuric beings take hold. All these forces are subject to gravity, whereas in the top of this slide, we can see supernature is woven of etheric formative forces. And beyond that is the astral world and the spiritual heavenly world beyond that. This is where the divine hierarchies are active. And in nature, we have the four elements, the four ethers and nature spirits. If we recall the foundation stone meditation, it says the spirits of nature in the north, south, east, and west hear it. May human beings hear it. The Christ says, behold, I make all things new. But human beings have to participate with their higher I. They have to realize that the I is the youngest member, and it has a lower self and a higher self. The higher self can only arise through the purifying of the astral body, and that invites the Maria archetype to play a role in our own soul life and sets the stage for the Sophia to incorporate in us, for wisdom to incorporate in our souls. So this is part of where the battle is. We have to raise our thinking. We have to sprout these wings of the eagle that the woman needed to fly to a higher stage of the astral to avoid the flood of the dragon. So we are called to co-create the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem, as Steiner indicated, descends from above. The old Jerusalem was built from below upwards. The New Jerusalem will be built in all reality from above downwards. The building of the old Jerusalem will be transformed into the spiritual building of the New Jerusalem, which we built from above downward. This involves integrating the levity forces working with the etheric formative forces, which come to expression in the various life rhythms, which can be celebrated through the festivals. Quote, for the Christ will in the encircling round hold sway in the rhythm of worlds, blessing the souls. That's taken from the middle verse of the foundation stone meditation. So we can turn to the plant world in order to read out of the book of nature, out of the book of life, because the plant world embodies the etheric sun forces. They are loyal to the sun. The blossom of a plant is turned to the sun. Those are the procreative organs of the plant. And they are chaste and pure, that love that comes to expression in the fragrance that rises out of the plant towards their beloved sun. For Christ was seen as the guardian by gardener by Mary Magdalene. That wasn't by accident. That is part of his archetypal nature. The Son is really the gardener of the earth, which has become the garden of the Lamb through the sacrifice of the Christ. The earth that had fallen away because human beings are the bridge between the earth and the divine. Through the fall, the earth fell with humanity. Through the turning point of time, the Christ taking on a physical body, he's reversing that fall. But we have to, out of human freedom, unite ourselves with that mystery of Golgotha so that we too can participate in building this new Jerusalem, in learning how to work with the etheric forces, to lift the veil of Maya, which Goethe did in his study of the plant world, the secret of metamorphosis, the archetypal plant. Goethe was one who was both a shepherd and a king in a certain respect. So he showed us how to lift that veil. And Rudolf Steiner spent like 14, 15 years working with Goethe's works on science, especially. So we need to realize that there is a high calling. And this is sort of taken from a lecture, an esoteric lecture, where Steiner speaks of the three kings and their spiritual gifts. So they represent the ancient Indian, the ancient Persian, and the Egypto-Chaldean, those three ages. And Steiner in this lecture indicated that in order for these three ages to be renewed in the future, the first age in the seventh, the second age in the sixth, and the third age in the fifth, the Christ came in the fourth, which is where the turning point of the sevenfold cycle comes to expression, that the Christ had to raise from the dead representatives of those three post-Atlantean cultures, the first, the second, and the third. And so the metamorphosis of our third age is related to the raising of the youth of 9 from the dead by the Jesus being. And the youth of 9 was formerly the youth of Sais in the Egyptian age. He's one of the ones who lifted the veil of Isis and was struck dead. And those were the death of the old Isis mysteries. But he now is there to help open the new Isis mysteries in our consciousness soul period, in this age of Pisces and the fishes. He later incarnates as Mani and subsequently as Parsival. So he is the leading initiate of our whole post-Atlantean age. Through Parsival destiny, he showed us how to live that consciousness soul. And then we have the representative of the Persian age. Zarathustra couldn't take on that role because he had incarnated as the Solomon Jesus. But a kind of, that was in the age of the twins. So his spiritual twin appeared as Lazarus. Lazarus, as is depicted in the 11th chapter of the Gospel of John, is really the secret heart of that gospel. Lazarus is the being who becomes the beloved disciple. And through the raising of Lazarus, Steiner indicated in his very last address, which was a fragment given on September 28th, 1924. He was wanting to give the second part on the 29th, but he was too sick. This involved the union of the two Johns. So that raising united the two Johns, John the Baptist and Lazarus John. Lazarus had been Hiram Abiff in a past incarnation and later reincarnates as Christian Rosenkreuz, as Le Count de Saint-Germain. And the Baptist reappears as Raphael the painter and Novalis. So both of these streams of incarnation passed into anthroposophy. And they were the ones who are preparing and will lead that next sixth age, which is of great significance. And I won't go on to the seventh age here, but it's the daughter of Jairus who will lead over that. She was raised from the dead by Christ. So here's the letter to the Church of Philadelphia that has to do with the sixth age. And anthroposophy is preparing that sixth age of Aquarius, the Philadelphia age, the age of brotherhood, the future Sophian age. And to the angel of the Church of Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold fast that which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God. And he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. So I was bringing this forward to show that from the lineage of David, the Nathan and the Solomon lineage, the shepherd and the kingly, the priest shepherd, the initiate kings, that has to do with the key of David. David united, he was the source of both of those streams. He still had them united within himself. He was both a shepherd and a king. He had his temple on Mount Zion, and in it, the Ark of the Covenant was brought. So unlike Solomon, who separated the temple and his stronghold, his castle, in the case of David, they were both still one. So that's the key of David. And the fact that two beings united, both offspring of David, when we follow the lineage back, that mystery of the two Johns repeats that same mystery through the communion that Steiner spoke of in his last address. So this is related to the foundation stone. In the first verse, the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones, the will, the divine Father aspect of the divinity. In the middle verse, it's the feeling life. It's the in Christo Morimor, the curiosities, dunamis, the Elohim or spirits of form are addressed, and the Son principle of the divinity. And then in the third verse, we have the Holy Spirit, the Per Spiritum Sanctum Revivissimus, the Archai, the archangels, the angels who are closest to us and who we can experience by raising our thinking to imagination, inspiration, and intuition. And there we have the age we're in. The Christ is not now coming in the way that he did at the turning point of time. He's coming through the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit represents the thinking of the divine that's embodied in the angels, archangels, archai. So Christ is coming through the third hierarchy. But these ninefold hierarchy are setting the stage for a 10th hierarchy. And humanity is being prepared to become the 10th hierarchy. And that is expressed in the 4th verse of the Foundation Stone meditation, which is really the preparation for the 6th epoch. So in a lecture titled Preparing for the 6th Epoch, Rudolf Steiner stated that, quote, the whole purpose of spiritual science is to prepare the 6th epoch of culture. This is a little tapestry my wife made. She made some for each of our children while she was carrying them. This was during the time that our son, Julian, was in gestation. And you have there this Sophian image with a kind of Raphaelic aspect in the foreground. So Michael and Raphael stand across from each other. Michael has to do more with the fall, Raphael with the spring and Easter. So we need this healing impulse of Raphael. So at the turning point of time, the spirit light of the world entered the stream of earthly evolution. Darkness of night had held its sway. Day radiant light poured into the souls of men. Light that gives warmth to simple shepherds' hearts. Light that enlightens the wise heads of kings. O light divine, O Son of Christ, warm thou our hearts, enlighten thou our heads, that good may become what from our hearts we would found, and from our heads direct with single purpose. That's a translation by George Adams, who was the one who was translating for Rudolf Steiner, and he went to England. And so this is really the foundation for the 10th hierarchy. The 3 first verses of the foundation relate to the ninefold hierarchy. Here we have what's needed for the 10th hierarchy. In order to reconnect with the Sophia, we need to unite the shepherds and the kings. We need to unite head and heart, like a lemniscate that I mentioned earlier. That's a sign of white magic. A lemniscate is a symbol of white magic. And if it weaves between head and heart, then in the heart is the center on one leg of that lemniscate, and the pineal gland is in the other. If you study the etherization of the blood, you can enter into what that mystery represents. Rudolf Steiner indicated that this lemniscate, the Cassini curve, is also there in the human body in the manner I just described, with the pineal gland in the middle of the head. And that pineal gland can shine like a miniature sun. And that golden aura of the pineal gland is the Grail vessel. And it was the aura that shone across around the Christ head and the disciples who took up his impulse. And in a certain lecture, Steiner speaks of how our present pineal gland is the metamorphosed human heart of our past incarnation. What we carried in our whole body is metamorphosed into the head of our next incarnation. So that's really the secret of the Grail. The skull is the Grail castle in a certain respect. Ascending to a new level of Earth evolution, the 6th cultural epoch will be the first anticipation of the future. It should also be pointed out that through the universal dissemination at that time of the mystery of Sophia, mankind will gradually begin to overcome the present form of conception and birth. conception through the interaction of the two sexes will be overcome. Rudolf Steiner described this in the following way, quote, in the sixth post-Atlantean cultural period, human fertility, in parentheses, the capacity for physical procreation, insofar as it derives from its impulse from the forces of light, will gradually die out, and dark powers will have to become involved with evolution for these processes to be taken further. And this is not necessarily a good thing. That's going to be the seventh cultural age, called the American one. And there's a danger in that inclination. You know that the rudiments of the sixth post-Atlantean epoch are to be found in Eastern Europe. Hence, the European East will develop a strong inclination not to let human procreation, physical procreation, to go beyond the sixth cultural period, but instead to lead to the earth to a more spiritual, more psychic existence. That's a quote from The Heavenly Sophia and the Being of Anthroposophy by Sergei Prokofiev. Ascending to the next higher stage of Earth evolution. So the sixth age runs from 3573 to 5733. We keep that in mind. In this quote, a time will come in the physical evolution of the earth that will be after the year 5700, when, if he fulfills his rightful evolution, man will no longer tread the earth by incarnating in physical bodies derived from physical parents. In that epoch, women will be barren. Children will no longer be born in the manner of today if evolution on the earth takes its normal course. There must be no misunderstanding about such a fact as this. Something else, for example, might come about. The Ahrimanic powers, which under the influence of the impulses working in man today are becoming extremely strong, might succeed in preventing Earth evolution in a certain respect. It would then become possible for men, by no means for their good, to be held in the same form of physical life beyond this time in the sixth or seventh millennium. They would become much more like animals, while continuing to be held in the grip of physical incarnation. One of the endeavors of the Ahrimanic powers is to keep humanity fettered too long to the earth in order to divert it from its normal evolution. However, if men really take hold of the best possibilities for their evolution, then in the sixth millennium, they will enter for a further 2,500 years into a connection with the earthly world of such a kind that they will, it is true, still have a relationship with the earth, but a relationship no longer coming to expression in the birth of physical children. In order to make the picture graphic, I will put it like this: in the clouds, in rain, in lightning and thunder, man will be astir as a being of spirit and soul in the affairs of the earth. He will pulsate, as it were, through the manifestations of nature, and in a still later epoch, his relationship to the earthly will become even more spiritual. So here again, we have to do with this eugenic birth mysteries of the future. At the time of the death of Christ, the event of Golgotha, human beings in general were capable of developing in body and soul until the 33rd year of life. Today, this development is possible until the 27th year. In the fourth millennium, a time will come when man will be capable of developing only until the 21st year. In the seventh millennium, the bodily nature will be capable of developing only until the 14th year of life. Women will then become barren. An entirely different form of earthly life will ensue. This is the epoch when the moon will again approach the earth and become part of it. Just as the separation of the moon was a decisive event, so too will be its re-entry. It is true that as human beings, we shall still be inhabiting the earth, although birth will no longer take place in the ordinary way. We shall be connected with the earth by other means than through birth. Man's being needs to have reached a higher level of existence when in the 8th millennium, women will become barren and the moon will unite once again with the earth. The earthly must then remain behind, with man directing and controlling it from outside like an object which he need not carry over with him into cosmic existence. Man must be so prepare himself that he need not be involved in what must inevitably develop upon the surface of the earth in this way. Man's being needs to have reached a higher level of existence when in the 8th millennium, women will become barren and the moon will unite once again with the earth. The earthly must then remain behind, with man directing and controlling it from outside, like an object which he need not carry over. Anyways, man, from pre-earthly existence, man has descended to this earthly life. His birth from woman began with the departure of the moon. But this physical form of birth is only a passing episode in the great sweep of cosmic evolution and will be replaced by another. It is the phase which was destined to bring to man the feeling and consciousness of freedom, the self-completeness of individuality and personality. So this is really something that we have to look forward to, because the 6th age is not far away. We can count it in millennium. And, 5700 is the end of that cultural age, which begins in 3573. And we tend to incarnate twice, once as a man, once a woman, in each period of 2,160 years. So if we start to look at the 6th age is the next age ahead of us. And so we heard earlier about the death of Sophia. And this is also related to the fact that the shepherds and the kings were embodying the last vestiges of an atavistic clairvoyance. And what was inspiration that the shepherds still experienced has in the meantime turned into outer sense perception, being imprisoned in the world of Maya and illusion. And on the other side, we have the kings who could still read the starry script, lift the veil of Isis, and witness the descent of Christ. That clairvoyant faculty has descended and become imprisoned in the human brain as abstract thinking. It has to be enlivened through living thinking, through heart thinking, so the soul can gain wings and ascend through this imaginative faculty into the higher astral world and thereby unite with the Sophia on a new level. On the other side, like Goethe, the shepherds, the priests need to lift the veil of Maya and illusion. And this, Steiner says, has to do with the forces beyond the threshold of death, whereas the gift of the kings has to do with the prenatal forces. So this has to do with something we need to unite these two streams within ourselves, which the 4th verse in the Foundation Stone meditation talks about as laying the foundation for the 10th hierarchy. Through this, we can reunite with the Sophia on a new level. We can awaken the Sophia who's been entombed in the star world on a new level. And the person who inaugurated this path was really the beloved disciple who is really Lazarus John, who under the cross was united into a communion with the Maria Sophia. And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. So we have the beginning of a new family that's not based on blood, The dragon we saw earlier involves the root races that harken back to the Atlantean period when it was in its right timing. Now it's out of its right timing. It wants to devour the higher self by having us embrace Darwinism, which tells us we're just higher animals, and regress back into racial identities at a time when we're meant to transcend that, to create a new kind of community that's not based on blood. And it was here at the turning point of time, in this woman, behold your son, and to the son, behold your mother, that this mystery of the new community of Philadelphia was planted in human evolution. So here we're touching on a mystery that has to do with the eighth sphere. The eighth sphere is a sphere of evolution that leads downward. Instead of upward to the New Jerusalem, it leads down in the transition period between this fourth stage of evolution to the fifth. From the planet of wisdom, that's the heritage of the old moon, to the new sun mysteries of the future that are born out of this world Christmas that I referred to, that the dragon is trying to prevent. But Michael helps us to overcome that. So the moon fortress, which provides resistance to the power of the eighth sphere, rules over the polarically related spheres of the reflective capacity of thinking on the one hand. That's where the moon is related to silver. Mirrors have silver behind their glass. That becomes sort of the selfless thinking of Sophia when the moon becomes a vessel for the sun. And then sexuality bound up with the hereditary impulse is the other aspect of the moon forces that Gabriel worked with in the eugenic mysteries during the Hebrew mission that led to the two children. The image of the woman standing on the moon, crowned with the sun and clothed with this sun and crowned with the 12 stars, who appears in the central drama of the book of Revelation, which has particular relevance in our time when the seventh trumpet is sounding, represents the birth of the sacrificial lamb. In order to participate in this marriage, we need to exercise our affinity to this higher world soul, referred to as the new Isis Sophia. Another name for this queen of the night who illuminates the darkness with her spiritual light is wisdom. She reveals imaginatively our threefold higher nature. She puts the lower moon forces beneath her feet. She can be seen as the archetype of our manas, or spirit self nature, that prefigures the stage we need to bring to full realization in the future Jupiter condition. The New Jerusalem, however, a preliminary stage of that development, is meant to unfold in the sixth age, when the Easter sun will shine from the constellation of Aquarius. The Slavic and Russian people share the mission to prepare this future Sophian age. Anthroposophia can be termed the youngest member of the Sophia, whose being reaches into the hierarchy of the Kyriates, or spirits of wisdom. According to Steiner, she is a being who has been participating in human evolution with her lowest member, her seventh member, since the time of Abraham. What is 1 year of our own biography involves 100 years for this invisible being. She has recently passed through her equivalent of the consciousness soul stage, and in order to unfold her spirit self stage, needs to pass through the individual human being who in freedom and love makes this communion possible. When Steiner revealed the 12 philosophical vantage points in his lecture on human and cosmic thought, he was doing so under the inspiration of this being who has, during the course of history, gone through phases of mediating theosophia, Philosophia, and more recently, Anthroposophia. So here, this is taken again from Sergei Prokofiev in the same book, The Heavenly Sophia and the Being of Anthroposophia, where he maps this out, starting with 2100 BC, and then moving through these different stages, where she is in the consciousness soul during our fifth age, but she passes through us and starts to anticipate and prophetically anticipate the sixth age. So she's objectively there leading us into our own future. But we have to look up to her in order to participate and open our hearts to a love for Sophia. And here in the West, Jakob Böhme was one of the forefathers of this Sophian impulse, which was also inspired by Valentin Andrei, who mediated the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz up there in the top and the middle. Paracelsus was another Rosicrucian inspired individuality, a doctor who Jakob Böhme looked up to. Jakob Böhme was a shoemaker of trade. He wasn't educated in the usual sense, but you could say he underwent a Rosicrucian initiation and shared that through his many writings. And that then flowed into various currents, into Isis Unveiled, Blavatsky's first work, and also then, of course, to Rudolf Steiner and students of Rudolf Steiner, Valentin Tomberg, Prokofiev, who both have background in the Russian Slavic cultures, civilizations. And there in the bottom left, you have Soloviev, who was an individual who had 3 encounters with the Sophia that he shares in a profound poem. And then there were 2 Russian Orthodox priests, Bulgakov and Pavel Florensky, who took up this Sophian impulse and shared it in their speaking and writing. And we can see how the suppression of this came about through the Bolsheviks. Pavel Florensky was imprisoned at a certain point and was in a prison camp on the White Island in the north of Russia. And there he was at a certain point executed. So you could say there are sort of martyrs of this Sophian impulse that was under Stalin, by the way, who kind of rivals Hitler in a certain respect. On the right side, upper right, we have then the German romantics and philosophers like Hegel, Schelling, Goethe, Novalis, that Steiner was very much aligned to. And on the bottom right, you have the William Blake, the English poet, and made a lot of beautiful art. And Jakob Böhme helped to inspire him. Then you have the Philadelphians, which are named after the age of Philadelphia. They saw themselves as preparers of that. They took up Böhme's impulse. And some of these who were inspired by Böhme came to America. Sometimes they're called the radical pietist movement, who came to America. Here we have the mystery of the 2 Johns. I just wanted to show here how we have then On the one hand, the John being, the Elijah being, the Raphael Novalis being, who bring this Sophia in the heavens down. In their sphere, the realm of grace is at work. This is the ego from outside at work. Whereas in the case of the Cain stream, where you have Hiram Abiff, Christian Rosenkreuz, Hiram, as one knows from the temple legend, descended to the center of the earth and received the golden hammer from there, and with it was able to complete the brazen sea and acquire the golden triangle. So this union of Cain and Abel is a part of this mystery of the two Johns that really prepares the way for the new Sophian mysteries. And in an esoteric lecture, Steiner created this sketch of the summer path, the Abel path, the winter path, the Cain path, and the two Johns unite these two. And he says there beneath this sketch, Rudolf Steiner wrote, "The summer way is the way of the Christian community in memory of a community prenatal in the spiritual world. Abel's way, the winter way of anthroposophists through cold solitude to knowledge, is Cain's way. Midsummer festival, St. John's Day, is related to John the Baptist, whose parents were both of the priestly shepherd stream, and according to tradition, the birth of Lazarus John is December 27th. He previously incarnated as Hiram Abiff, representative of the Cain stream. The raising of Lazarus involves the incorporation of John the Baptist into the soul of Lazarus John. This communion gave rise to the beloved disciple, author of the Gospel of John." So I'm thinking of the time here. I know we've been at this for quite some time now. So let me round this off. Rosicrucian preparations for the sixth age. To begin with, Christianity is bound up with the purely materialistic culture of the fourth and fifth epoch, and the true Christianity of the future, which possesses the secret of the molten sea and the golden triangle, only exists secretly. This Christianity has another symbol, no longer that of the crucified Son of God, but the cross encircled with roses. This will become the symbol of the new Christianity of the sixth post-Atlantean epoch. Out of the mystery of the brotherhood of the Rose Cross will arise the Christianity of the sixth cultural epoch, which will recognize the significance of the molten sea and the golden triangle. The molten sea is what is created when the appropriate amounts of water and molten metal are cast. The three apprentices do it wrongly, and the casting is destroyed. But when the mysteries of fire are revealed to Hiram by Tubal-Cain, he is thereby enabled to unite water and fire in the proper way. This brings the molten sea into being. This is what the secret of the Rosicrucians is. It is brought about when the water of calm wisdom is united with the fire of the astral world, with the fire of the passion and desire. A union must be brought about which is of bronze, that is to say, is lasting and durable. It must endure into the next epoch, when the secret of the sacred golden triangle is added to it, the secret of Atman, Buddhi, and Manas. This triangle, with all which it entails, will form the content of the renewed Christianity of the sixth cultural epoch. That is being prepared by the Rosicrucians. And then what is symbolized by the molten sea will be united with the knowledge of reincarnation and karma. That is the new occult teaching, which will be united again with Christianity. The higher self of man, composed of Atman, Buddhi, Manas, will become an open secret when the man of the sixth epoch has become ripe enough to receive it. Christian Rosenkreuz will then no longer be required to give warning, but everything which signifies strife on the outer plane will be resolved in peace through the molten sea and the golden triangle. So here we have a picture of that evolution, where just as the higher ego is born in the individual, so the higher ego of all humanity, the divine ego, was born in Palestine. And the danger of the eighth sphere is averted, and we help to build the New Jerusalem by seeing the future in the transformation of the astral body into spirit self, the life etheric body into life spirit or buddhi, and the physical body into Atman. Those represent the next three stages, where human beings are called in the fifth stage to rise to the level that the angels currently are, who embody Manas and spirit self, and in the future Venus rise to the archangelic level, where they will attain life, spirit, and buddhi, and ultimately to the stage that the Archai presently embody, the transformed physical body, where the body becomes a temple. And the Christ being prefigured all of that at the turning point of time and gave the gift of the golden triangle, which is celebrated in esoteric Christianity. So this then, the foundation stone helps us to prepare this. If we understand that the will foundation was laid in old Saturn, the foundation for feeling in the old sun, the foundation for thinking in the old moon, in the earth state, the ego that needs to unite and harmonize the three, which can only be done by looking up to the divine Trinity, which the foundation stone meditation helps us to do by tuning our moral compass. After we do our meditative work, we're crossing the threshold, the three soul forces divide, and we need to bring them into balance. And when we then build the human counterpart to the divine Trinity that comes to us from above, then we can build this symbol of the Holy Grail, symbolized by the pentagram, and give birth to the mystery of love, which is the fashioning of the future planet of love. And once again, this has to do with the Grail mysteries, where the foundation for this was laid at the mystery of Golgotha. So let us place before ourselves the mother, thought of as a virgin with Christ on her lap. And let us then make the statement, he who can have feelings of holiness before this image, he feels himself to be standing before the Grail, the holy chalice, the moon mother, now touched by Christ, the new Eve, bearer of the Christ, like sun spirit, outshines all other lights, all other gods. So Rudolf Steiner brings this before us, this Grail vessel, as a kind of future-oriented goal that has to do with the heart and the pineal gland in a certain respect. And each one of us have the Parsival nature and the Amfortas nature in us. Here, Parsival visits the Grail Castle for the first time He witnesses Amfortas suffering, but he neglects to answer the question. He sees the grail being carried, and there it's not a male priest, but the representative of Sophia bearing the Holy Grail. And what is the question? The question that he fails to ask is, what ails thee? We carve out that hard stone, the pineal gland at the middle of our head, through compassion that comes into our word, compassion for others that widens out our identity to include the circle of karmic relationships that has to do with taking up the cross. When we do that, then the Christ enters and indwells us, and our word can become the micrologos, the Grail sword. So that sort of comes to expression in the Pietà after Parzival leads the Grail castle. He comes upon this woman who is Ziguna with Shianatalanda. These are actually earlier incarnations of Ita Wegman and Rudolf Steiner, we can discover. And Shianatalanda sort of dies on behalf of Parzival, and you could say overlights him. And Parzival meets Ziguna like 4 different times. And in this first encounter, he learns his name for the first time. His mother was trying to withhold his name to prevent him from becoming a knight and getting killed like his father did. So let me then lead over in the end here to the Pentecost event. Again, the third dispensation is then not the Father, the Son, but that of the Holy Spirit. The Sophia Maria is at the middle, the center of this. And here we can look up to this gift of the Holy Spirit bestowed through Michael and the angelic hosts. Behold, I make all things new. The angels are weaving new sun imaginations into human souls, co-creating the new marriage of heaven and earth. The truth will make you free, forming a new community founded upon spiritual kinship, a grail circle, a sun circle where 2 or 3 are gathered, forging a common heart with love founded on freedom. And end with this image of the baptism with fire and the Rose Cross, which is related to this Christianity of the future. And through that, we can gain the eagle's wings in order to participate in Per Spiritum Sanctum Revivissimus, and thereby awaken the higher self that can give birth to higher love that we need to contribute to the building of the New Jerusalem. So thank you very much for your patience. And I know this is a lot to take in.
Yeah, dear Florian, thank you so much for your beautiful presentation with so many slides and knowledge. Yes, are you okay? So you have water. Are you able to answer questions of friends?
Sure, sure.
So do you need maybe a minute of break to restore your voice? You're good?
I'm fine.
You're good. Okay. So dear friends, do you know how to raise your hand, right? So it's reactions on the bottom of your screen. Click on it. It's raise a hand. So it will be electronic hand shown on your house. I know we collected lots of questions or statements in our chat windows. Is Waldemar still present?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you unveil your face, please? I mean, maybe you
Well,
can start
yes.
discussion.
I don't know
Yeah.
what happened here.
I think you have unstable internet connection because you are in the mountains of Brazil.
We can imagine the invisible being of Valdemar here present.
Yes,
Well,
at least we can
happened,
hear.
yeah, it happened that my connection went down, and then it was a confusion here. I was directed to a browser connection, a Zoom connection, and so on. And then I open again the Zoom and have no image. I'm so sorry. What did you want from me? Oh, now I have it. Okay.
Yeah, he's back.
Here I am. Here I am again. Yes. So, Andrew, what did you want from me?
Well, no, I just asked. I think you had some statements or questions in your chat window. Maybe you can start discussion if you want. But if you don't, so there are some different people.
No, I think the lecture was quite overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's better to stay still.
Okay, thank you for it. I agree with you. I agree with you. It's a lot of stuff to digest. I remember it was some questions from Patricia about references. Patricia, are you present? So I know you brought some references from Sergei Prokofiev, and it was not completely clear what is source of them. But if Patricia is not present, so we can skip it too.
I can come into the audio. I think that was the case.
Yes. Go ahead, please.
They were probably Sergei Prokofiev. This was some of them in the beginning, and I can't tell you now.
Because so many slides.
Yeah, and I think maybe what I'll do is I'll go back and I might be able to bring them up anyway. So, yeah. So sorry, Florian. I know you have so much.
Not at all.
But now that I have you for a moment, it was so lovely to see Cindy's work there at the very beginning with the two Jesus children.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely drawing. I don't know if other people are recalling it, but so I'm guessing it was a long time ago that this happened, but that this was done.
Yeah.
I believe almost all artistic work is done by Cindy.
Yeah, I think a lot of it. Yeah. So please tell her thank you for me. It's been a long time. We were in our 20s when we met, I think.
Oh.
So, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sherilyn, go ahead. Finally, we have some questions. So, yes, go ahead.
What I had wanted to say is I recently watched a program that was dealing with the capital of our country, and I did not know this, but on the Capitol, on the dome of the Capitol building, there rests a 19-foot, I think they said, bronze statue of an Indian woman, Iroquois, who has on the top of her head an eagle. And in reference to the Sophia, it made me think of this whole image of the Sophia, and that many of our founding fathers were of a Masonic nature, and that whole capital area is actually a Masonic grid. If you look at everything, the different buildings and how they're laid out. So it was just sort of a question, maybe for Florian, if he's ever if he knows about this and what his comment might be on that.
I know there were Freemasons that were very much involved in the founding of America, and the original documents like the Constitution and George Washington, for example, was a Mason, and the city of Washington, D.C. was very much laid out in terms of the architecture that was very sort of central to Freemasonic impulse, which was to transform the mineral kingdom into a work of art and make it sacred. However, the Civil War, there were generals and others on both sides of the war that were Freemasons. So it wasn't like they were able to totally bring the impulse of peace that they had hoped, just like the French Revolution was sort of a time when this liberté, égalité, fraternity, which goes back to the Freemasons, was uttered. And pretty soon the guillotine came out and a lot of blood was shed. And then Napoleon came on the scene. So they were able to contribute to getting rid of the lineage of kings, only to have it replaced with kind of an emperor, Napoleon. But the Freemasons, to a certain extent, felt that Europe, the old forces were very powerful there, and that this new world would be a easier place to leave some of that baggage behind and begin a new beginning. And so Benjamin Franklin was a Freemason. He played a role in the Statue of Liberty, finding its way into, the harbor outside of New York that welcomed new citizens. And the Pentagon was one of the later additions to the layout of the area near Washington, D.C., across the river. It has a pentagonal form, and if you put a 5-pointed star on top of that pentagon and you draw a line from the center of the peak of that star through the center of the back of it, it shoots directly over to the Capitol building. So you have many generations of Freemasonry who worked in this direction, but Freemasonry has both a positive and a negative side to it. There's the shadow side of Freemasonry. I know the Iroquois, they had a sacred tradition that some of the early pilgrims who were more interested in peace than war, and they felt that we had something to learn from the spiritual traditions of the Iroquois. So having that there in a statue in Washington kind of can be a part of that effort to not just suppress and conquer the Indians, but also to value and carry forward into the future of America some of what the heritage, the spiritual heritage they had to offer. You find like Black Elk Speaks and other individualities out of the Indian spirituality who also, gave gifts. They still knew about the elemental beings, about the animal totems. They looked up to the animal group souls. They had their sweat lodges, their purification ceremonies, etc. So there's more to learn than what history usually gives us of the American Indians that we can, I think, value. But Rudolf Steiner said the backward Freemasons were among those who were involved in the burning of the Goetheanum. So there's also this dark side. And if we look to the Pentagon and that pentagram I referred to, that's aligned to the Washington, that's an upside down pointed star, which has two horns. Magic has the symbol of the five-pointed star, but if you turn it upside down, it becomes the two-horned beast. So we can use those forces for good and evil. And if we put them in the service of nationalism, colonialism, then the dark side comes in that has to do with the dragon with seven heads, etc., which is very powerfully present in the present world situation. And this coming year, we can expect to see that coming powerfully to the foreground with nationalism, whether it's Christian nationalism, white supremacists, all of these faction blaming the people coming from the southern border or from the Middle East. All of these are a way of stoking the racial antagonism that we see going on in Gaza and Israel and between the brothers of the Russian people and the Ukrainians as well. So anthroposophy needs to rise above these polarized ways of looking at the world. But anyways, that's I'll leave it at that for the moment. Thank you.
I have a short statement on this particular topic. So the name of the statue is Columbia, which is considered as true spirit of America. From spiritual science, each nation is led by three archangelic beings. Two of them, they are retarded. And only one archangelic being is proper one, which has very intimate relation to the individuals, representatives of nation. So, and another archangelic beings, this is retarding archai. And one more is retarded, in fact, twice retarded spirit of form, which is forming the language. And retarded archai is forming type of mind. And it looks like in case of America, the second one, retarded archai, is taking over from proper archai. So this is my vision on this, but you can read it in GA number 121, lecture number 3.
Yeah, that's the folk soul lectures where Steiner speaks of a backward archai, and you could say that through the backward archai works the backward spirit of form. And so it's important to be awake and watchful about these things, so that Steiner asked, how much would Woodrow Wilson's brain be worth if it wasn't established on the throne of the American presidency? He referred to him as a kind of world school teacher, and he helped to foment equality among races and nations, which was a step backward, according to Steiner.
Yeah, according to some researchers, Uncle Sam took over from Columbia. So, but, I'm not 100% sure in it, but, we have Rick Spalding in Chicago, made pretty significant research on it. Okay, friends, Waldemar, are you ready to ask your question?
Yes. Florian, it seems to me that mankind is rapidly going into degeneration. We have much more consciousness than in the beginning of the 20th century, but we have more and more wars and, as I said, nationalism, religious fundamentalism, barbarism, so the next future doesn't look very bright. What do you think about it?
Rudolf Steiner indicated, I can't think of the actual specific lecture right this minute, but he said if the Michael impulse wasn't taken up as intended, we know that Michael was the sun archangel, more powerful than the other archangels. Already in 869, there was a falling away of the other archangels from the Michael playing the central role, because Michael gave up his rulership of the cosmic intelligence in order to prepare the way for freedom. And Steiner said at that time there was a situation where the souls of humanity went into this situation of some were oriented upward. It was at that same time that the Grail mysteries, which were esoteric Christianity, were celebrated, where Parzival became king of the Grail around that 869 period. But at the same time, the church created a new dogma that denied the Trinitarian concept of the divinity, and said it was only a twofold, and that in the meantime, we don't just have body and soul, but if you don't have spirit, which that council denied, then eventually in modern psychiatry like Freud, you also kill the soul. So then all you have is a physical body, which modern science, of course, says is the case. We're just higher animals. And Darwinian survival of the fittest, and of course Marxism. Marx was a Darwinist. Postmodern philosophy has no vertical dimension, and that brings about sort of the death of philosophy, of the Sophia in philosophy. So Rudolf Steiner warned that if we didn't take up, at least in a strong enough way, this Michael impulse, then we could have the war of all against all already at the beginning of the new millennium, which is the time we're in. And the war of all against all isn't just a war against nation and races, class against class, gender against gender. We can see this. It's kind of a prevision of the future war of all against all that comes at the end of the seventh age, which is the American age. So we're getting a sort of telescoping in of that war of all against all. And part of the reason for that is that Rudolf Steiner died prematurely before he could consolidate the new Vorstand that was established at the Christmas Foundation meeting, which he said was the last and third attempt to bring a new impulse into anthroposophy. And if it failed, there wouldn't be another opportunity for those who were incarnated with him. And the fact that Rudolf Steiner disclosed to Countess Kaiserling that the Jesuits had infiltrated the Anthroposophical Society, and that in order to counter their influence, he had invited women to play a central role in the Vorstand that he brought forward at the Christmas conference. That included Marie Steiner, Ita Wegman, and Vrede. He also had wanted to bring Edith Marian in. There was going to be 7 rather than 6, but Edith Marian became too sick. So you would have had all of these women playing a very important role at the center of the renewal of the Anthroposophical Society. And it was meant to have 3 classes. But these, in my view, we live in the time of the mystery of evil, Steiner said, so we need to be awake. That sculptural group, which was supposed to be at the back of the Goetheanum, never got put in place. Steiner wanted it to be put in the second Goetheanum at the very center of the stage. Instead, it was put into a side room. That already was a sign that the central governing group of anthroposophists, who in the meantime had pushed out the women. Ita Wegman and Vrede were pushed out in 1935. If we look into the karmic secrets surrounding Ita Wegman, we know that she was incarnated with Steiner in his incarnation as Thomas Aquinas. We know that she was incarnated with him in the 9th century. We know that she was incarnated with him at the Ephesus, and that she was incarnated when he was Aristotle. She was the being who then was embodied in this warrior who spread Greek wisdom into the Asia Minor and surrounding world. And she's the one who asked the question, the Parsival question. Steiner made that, he spoke that in public in front of the other members, that led him to undertake the Christmas Conference initiative. So these events of in 1935, which is a critical year, in 1933, Hitler took over in Germany. In 1935, in the fall of 1935, anthroposophy was forbidden in Germany. Christian community priests were arrested, their libraries were confiscated and burned and destroyed. And the Waldorf schools were eventually closed down. And so that was an attack of Zorat on Central Europe, and it sought to destroy the work of Rudolf Steiner and succeeded in setting it back. But the stage was set for that by the infighting within anthroposophical circles that was instigated by these Jesuits who infiltrated the society and brought out the shadow. They work through the will. They have a magical power that one could call gray magic, that Steiner spoke of in From Jesus to Christ lectures, where he says afterwards, that's when the attacks started, after he gave that lecture. And he said they were the polar opposite of Christian Rosenkreuz's initiation. They leave people unfree. They work through the underground of the will. And my sense is Albert Stephan came under their influence. And voting started to play a role. And Albert Stephan could call on voters from the Switzerland because that's where the society was centered. And that led to Ita Wegman, Vrede getting pushed out. And later, Marie Steiner also was sidelined. And this had to do with the publishing of Steiner's books that she was given charge of through Steiner's will. And at first, Albert Stephan was on the side of Marie Steiner and defending her in the early days when the Ita Wegman faction was saying that those writings should be made part of the Anthroposophical Society. But later, Albert Stephan changed his attitude and went after Marie Steiner's overseeing the published work. And this went to court, and Albert Stephan and his group lost that, and Marie Steiner was given the rights of publishing, introducing Steiner's work. but for the longest time, as a result, Steiner's book that were published by the Marie Steiner Verlag weren't made available in the Anthroposophical Society. This lasted like into the 60s or something. And so there, all of this infighting, which didn't stop until Zeilmas von Emmichhofen wrote a letter, and Albert Stephan responded, and they were integrated. In the meantime, the Dutch Society had been pushed out along with Ita Wegman and Breda. The English Society had been pushed out. This weakened the impulse of anthroposophy to where what Steiner called the consolidation of anthroposophy that was meant to reach a certain conclusion at the end of the 20th century was substantially weakened. This was supposed to lead to the communion, the union of the Aristotelian and Platonic streams. And so I feel that's what we're suffering, the aftermath of that infighting, aftermath of that weakness within the leadership and the attacks by the Freemasons and Jesuits who burned the building down and then went after Steiner, pushed him across the threshold prematurely before he could consolidate the new Vorstand, and then helped to foment these factionalism that led to Ita Wegman Breda getting pushed out and later the attacks on Marie Steiner. So we're living in the consequence of those failures. And I'm sure those souls after death, where they had to reconnect with Rudolf Steiner, have become painfully aware of their failings and have made new resolves to counterbalance their effects of their weaknesses and failures. But we're all having to deal with that situation. And so as a result, we're getting a pretty powerful prevision of the war of all against all in our time.
Thank you very much. So, dear friends, we are working 2 hours and 16 minutes. So, and I think because of Richard holding his hand already pretty long, we can take one more. George, maybe you can save your question for the future because Florian will be here. But he's
Florian. Come on, he can answer it. We can do. It'll only take a minute.
Well, no. I mean, the thing is, it's not because of you. It's, I know. It's because of Florian takes so much effort to answer your question, so it's just running into another lecture. So, but okay.
I'll try to keep it short.
Sorry?
I'll try to keep it short.
Florian, can you keep it short? Like, let's do blitz.
Sure.
But, for sake of orderliness, so let's take to Richard. Speak first.
Yes. Okay, yeah, fine. Okay. This is really a comment. Thank you, and thank you for the entire Holy Nights that we've had, because this gives us tools. But there are people who are also doing the work unconsciously who do not know this in various churches and various mosques and doing the Michaelic thing without the awareness. That's what I have found. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for your statement. So, okay, continuing blitz from George.
Thanks, Andre. Quickly, Florian, you'll probably be aware of this, but in Adrian Anderson's comment on the fifth seal, he mentions that in his research in some 360 volumes of Rudolf Steiner, he mentions the Sophia 17 times. And in each occasion, he's mentioning it as the spiritual soul in which the spiritual self is developing. And only on 2 occasions does he refer to the Sophia in his Isis lectures in terms of an apparent goddess. And he quotes Rudolf Steiner saying is that Isis is the personification of the all wisdom in the world. And it seems to me that according to him, that the Sophia should really be the spiritual self that we're referring to. And perhaps the Sophia is the sort of culmination of all the spiritual beings working within wisdom in the world. And he speaks of, when we talk about the Sophia as a goddess, we're really using that as a, how can I put it, a poetic speech, a sense of poetic speech. I was wondering if you had any comment on that, because there is this sort of dichotomy in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if one goes to Rudolf Steiner's work, people will tend to interpret it according to their own preconceived ideas.
Okay.
And so we have to, I think, read more widely, especially those who come out of the Russian folk soul within anthroposophy, like Prokofiev. He's got a book he's written on the Holy Night, the 12 or 13 Holy Nights.
Yeah,
he
he
goes
certainly
into this Sophia being, and then his other book on the Heavenly Sophia and the being Anthroposophia, and the same with Tomberg's Old and New Testament studies, where he speaks of a counter trinity to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He speaks of the Holy Mother, the Holy Soul or Sister Soul, the Holy Daughter, you could say, and then the Holy Soul as counterbalance to the Holy Spirit. So my sense is that these Russian folk soul is preparing the sixth age and have a special relationship to it. I find Adrian Anderson somewhat taking a more scholarly approach. And for example, he was rejecting the letters that are attributed to Rudolf Steiner to Ita Wegmann, and giving the impression that these were somehow somebody forged them or put them forward, whereas others accept them as being an expression of Steiner's relationship to this particular human being who has a relationship to the Sophia being, and that Steiner had many incarnations of relationship with this that were there in the 9th century as a love relationship between man and woman that was then broken off by his death. So it, like with Novalis, that love crossing and reaching out to the beloved across the threshold of death, that's something that Steiner went through with this soul of Ita Wegmann as this figure Zaguna back then that helped to awaken Parzival. So I think there's, in Prokofiev's view, the Sophia being reaches into the realm of the Kyriatides. And then her second member below that is the spirits of motion. The third one below that, the spirits of form. The fourth one below that are then the archangel or the archai. Then the fifth is the archangel. Then the sixth is the angels. And the seventh is the human realm. So this is something that Steiner brought out, and Prokofiev deals with. Zygmunt von Gleich also wrote a whole book on this, Steiner's, and that's where this being reaches from the Kyriatides, which is the highest starry aspect of the sun realm, where the Christ has descended from. So it's like Isis and Osiris. He's both the sister and the bride, and they incarnate together as a kind of syzygy at the time of the baptism. And that the Sophia actually penetrates right down to the physical level in the Solomon Jesus, which is a prefiguration of what we're going to need to undergo these higher birth mysteries that go beyond dual sexuality in the sixth age. So the Sophia, the Maria, incorporating the Sophia with the help of the Nathan Jesus are the key to those future eugenic birth mysteries that I feel will lead into the sixth age, that the beloved disciple who wrote the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation sort of embodied.
Okay.
Okay, dear friends. Dear Florian, thank you so much for your very intense presentation as usual. And we are meeting tomorrow, because tomorrow is presentation of Waldemar Setzer from Brazil. So same time, same link, and same place. Yes. Yeah, please feel free and mute your computers and say a big thank you to Florian. Dear Florian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Florian.
Thanks, Florian.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Florian.
Thank you, Florian.
Thank you, Florian. Thank
And
you
I
so much.
agree with Richard that there's many others who carry this impulse on a level that is not always conscious, and that that's where we can be a help potentially.
Good night, dear friends.
Thank you, Florian.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.